prevalence of HIV among black people is something that really needs close examination. And so when we think about rates, in 2015 and 2016 data, we see that black people represent nearly 25% of those living with HIV in Ontario, whereas make up only about 5% of the population of Ontario. And so we need targeted programming. Heterosexual black men are one of those groups that have not been closely examined. Very little data about them in terms of why they are so vulnerable to HIV. We have 4 sites. So Ottawa is one of the sites. Toronto Rising University is our major site. We have London Western University. We have Windsor. So those are our 4 sites.
weSpeak project is a 5-year program of research which, in a nutshell, try to understand the factors that increase the vulnerability of ACB heterosexual men to HIV, and not just understanding these vulnerabilities, but also identifying ways in which ACB men can build resilience in response to HIV.
What intrigued me most about the project was the particular interest in heterosexual men. That for me was the biggest thing, because the way our social structures are designed is such that heterosexual men tend to be deliberately left out. The social structures put emphasis on children. The social structures put emphasis on youth. Social structures will put emphasis on women. Now we've gone a step further to the social structures put emphasis on the LGBTQ, or specifically on gay men, especially in light of the issues of HIV. And all this emphasis, you realize that they leave the heterosexual man out. And yet, in my opinion, if we are going to be looking at HIV as sexually transmitted disease, or at least that's how, generally speaking, HIV is transmitted. Of course, given there are many other ways in which HIV is transmitted, it becomes strange that that discussion around HIV transmission can actually omit or put less emphasis on heterosexual men, who, in my opinion, in all these categories we spoke about, are probably the most active sexually. And so there has to be some level of emphasis on heterosexual male, and that's why I was very intrigued by the weSpeak project.
And why did we call it weSpeak? weSpeak had a forerunner that was called iSpeak. It was a study that was done in Toronto to actually understand what black men really think about how the media or even the literature portrays them and their masculinity. This 5-year study, funded by CIHR and the OHT and the Ontario HIV Treatment Network, it's a follow-up to that first study. And why weSpeak? Because it's black men's time to speak up.
The focus of the project is really to help the ACB community get ready to fight against HIV. So building resilience. Sometimes we have some of the ideas about how HIV actually is in Canada. Like before we come here, if you go through the immigration process, then you get to test against HIV. And one of the issues with this is that when people get their test results and they test negative, when they get to Canada, they forget. They feel like you don't need to protect yourself anymore, because some people even think that in Canada, HIV actually doesn't exist. Because here, you don't see the media talking about HIV like endemic countries, where it's in the media all the time. It's you get to hear it everywhere you go. So it's in people's minds, so people are ready because they hear about it, so they always have it in mind to take any kind of action that they need to take to fight the disease. This is not the case here in Canada. When people come here, because of some of the, I would say, our traditions, there are things that we don't discuss, particularly related to sex. So if sex is taboo, talking about HIV is a big issue for many of us. Having these projects, we get to engage ECB heterosexual men and also let them understand, because many people have the ideas that, okay, HIV is mainly for LGBTQ community. It's now the heterosexual black man. So usually these are some of the assumptions that we hear when we did the research.
So the project was born out of the need to hear firsthand from the population themselves, so that any decision that is being made with respect to developing policies won't be based on assumptions, but will be based on real evidence.